some yes. Can you guys hear me with or without the mic? Wonderful. Without the mic is fine because I'm mic'd up here, so we're good. We're good? We're good? Wonderful. How's everybody doing? Good. Day 2. We're rocking and we're rolling. I always get really antsy about hearing my bio because I'm like, when did I do all that stuff? You know, like, what's going on? I need a sabbatical, right? ASAP. But again, super excited to be here. It was great to connect with a lot of you yesterday during our breakout sessions, during dinner. What a great dinner. Very bougie. I told Dr. Owen, I was like, this is my kind of style with the view and all the things. But again, super excited to be here. I'm from Lafayette, Louisiana, traveling from New Orleans, and excited for this very cool weather. So good morning. It is an honor to be here today, surrounded by the incredible individuals who dedicate their careers and lives to empowering our young people. Today, I want to first celebrate your power and how we can use our collective power to ensure a much seamless process for all of our students in this ever-evolving post-secondary landscape. Again, my name is Dr. Chantelle George. I'm the CEO of CG Consulting. We are a social impact consulting firm that focuses on all things college and career readiness, pretty much the pipeline from high school to career. So we work with nonprofits, districts, institutions, funders to really help them figure out how to build, improve, and grow their program at scale. So super excited to be here. We've had the opportunity to work with quite a few organizations here. Some of them you may be familiar with, and feel super blessed, specifically as a Black woman in this space, to be able to have the opportunity to work with so many organizations in a consulting world that is not always exciting and fun, and many times consultants do not look like the students that we serve. And so I stepped in this space really to bring my expertise to the table, but also really to try to change the narrative of what a consultant actually looks like. So with that said, the path from high school to a fulfilling career is intricate and complex, and we are the architects behind the scenes guiding students through this crucial phase. So this bridge, as we've all been talking about, from K through 12 to higher education, is ever evolving. The world of post-secondary choice is constantly shifting, rising costs, changing demographics, and an emphasis on skills-based learning are reshaping the expectations for students across the country. Now more than ever, there's a constant conversation, or some would say, a healthy debate between who has access to college, is college for all, which is the best pathway for students. And so we are on this journey together, right? Supporting students and navigating this bridge from K through 12 to higher education. So a lot of us are asking these questions, right? How do we support students across this bridge? Who has access to the bridge? What do we need to know about the other side? Is the left side talking to the right side, which is a big conversation. For those of you that are unicorns like me that have worked in both K through 12 and higher ed, you can probably agree that there's a lot of work to be done around the communication between the two. But nevertheless, the reality is all of us are really still trying our best to figure this out. So I want to start a little bit about my journey across the bridge and talk about some of these amazing individuals that you see here. So again, I am from Lafayette, Louisiana. We are a smaller town about 2 hours west of New Orleans. Both of my parents are from even smaller towns outside of Lafayette, and so we are very rural. We still fish in the backyard at my dad's house, full transparency. As I would say, I live in New Orleans, but I'm from the Bayou. And so the accent may come in and out of this speech, and so you'll see it. But anywho, felt very blessed to have a very supportive family. My grandmother, who you see here, she lived until she was 96 years old. She was a graduate of Southern University and taught education for 30 plus years. And then my mother went to Dillard University in New Orleans. So both HBCU grads, and I was blessed to really have that experience as I stepped into my college journey as a third generation college student. And so you can imagine the conversation we had when I chose LSU. That's a whole different speech in regards to that. But my journey over the bridge was, for the most part, very blessed again to have family engagement. I went to public schools K through 12, and I lucked out because I had a school counselor who was amazing. Her name was Adrienne Kimball. She was not an expert in college and career readiness, but she cared deeply about students. I was also a student who was bused 30 minutes to a predominantly white high school because I was gifted and talented. And so that whole experience, now looking as an adult, was different. And so always felt the need to work really hard in those spaces. But Adrienne was the counselor. We had about 1,500 students in our high school, so a pretty large high school with 2 counselors. So you can imagine how those caseloads were not happening. But she was really in charge of the seniors, and at best, so back then there was no Naviance and SCORE and Zello, National Clearinghouse. I don't think any of that, existed or whatnot. But at best, she had a scholarship bin and an application bin. So one of those old school bins with like the the folders. And I was that student where I always knew where I was going. I always knew that I was going to college. It was just a matter of where I'm going and how am I going to pay for this. So we grew up in an underserved community in rural Louisiana. I was a free reduced student. I was a free reduced lunch student, Pell eligible, all those pieces. And so although my parents were educated, it was still a conversation of how are we going to pay for this. So I was the student that was aggressively in the scholarship bin every other day. And she's like, Chantelle, you're back. I'm like, are there any new ones coming? And she'd be like, well, maybe there's one new one. So I was a student that was always in the bin. And she was always writing my letters of recommendation. And still to this day, Adrienne Kimball is still a counselor in Louisiana. And I've had the opportunity actually to reconnect with her as an adult. But just to have someone else outside of the family who really looked at me and saw that I was important, that I was worthy of some of the national scholarships that I had never heard of. And so she really encouraged me to apply to Coca-Cola and apply to Gates Millennium and apply to McNair and some of these scholars programs that I had no idea existed. So nevertheless, I ended up becoming a student on the TOPS curriculum. And for some of you that were in the small group yesterday, probably heard me rant a little bit about our own state, but I wanted to share about how Louisiana is currently set up because I think it's going to add value to our group discussion that we're going to have. And so currently in Louisiana, there are 2 graduation pathways. One is the TOPS program, which stands for the Taylor Opportunity Program for Students. It's been a while for a very long time. It is our state-funded, merit-based state scholarship that students have the opportunity to receive if they meet a certain level of requirements. And then also there's a Jumpstart pathway, which is fairly newer to the state. And that's geared for students who are interested in pursuing credentials, technical degrees, particularly community college. And so these students are really placed on these pathways post 8th grade. So when I was in high school, many students knew about TOPS. You may not know where you're going, you may not have understood financial aid, but you knew the word TOPS. Half of us didn't even know what TOPS stood for, but we were like, I'm going TOPS, I need to get this institution or this college paid for. And the same requirements, go figure, in 2006, which were a set of about 19 credits of courses, 4 Englishes, 4 maths, et cetera, a 2.5 GPA, and a 20 on the ACT would pretty much unlock the door to that type of funding. So I, like many students, aggressively tried to get through those courses, keep my GPA up, and take the ACT. I was not a really good test taker at all. I took the ACT 5 times in high school. I started 10th grade and pretty much took it multiple times until I was able to get above a 20 to unlock that funding. But many students, a lot of my colleagues, specifically the ones who looked like me, were unable to get a 20 on the ACT. Even those that had 4.0 GPAs, that really wanted to go to college, could not unlock the funding. And so for those students, they tried to figure out how are they gonna pay for college out of pocket. Many of them took a great amount of student loan debt out, et cetera. And if we fast forward to now, in 2024, the 20 ACT is still a requirement for this particular graduation pathway. When we know that, again, many of our students, specifically students from marginalized communities, students of color, are still not able to get the 20 on the ACT. And nevertheless, with the Jump Start pathway, there is a healthy debate in our state about both of these. For students that are on the Jump Start pathway, as I was mentioning a little bit before yesterday, who are excited about potentially maybe pursuing welding or digital marketing or CDL, et cetera. But many of them, the vast majority who complete that pathway, do not have the courses they need to apply to a 4-year. They have at best the courses to apply to a community college. And so what happens is, and what the conversation is in quite a few of the rooms in Louisiana are, do students really understand what these pathways are at 13, right, in 8th grade? Do parents even know what they're signing themselves up for, right? I've run into a lot of parents who their students or their kids are juniors in high school at this point, and they're like, Chantelle, we want to apply to LSU, or we want to apply to Southern, or we want to apply to University of Louisiana at Lafayette. And I asked, well, what pathway is your student on? They're like, oh, they're on the Jump Start. And I don't think they even really realize what that means. But then there's the real conversation of they actually don't have the courses to apply to a 4-year. And then you can imagine that conversation or that disappointment whenever they realize that their students are not really going to be able to apply, or they can start at a 2-year and try to transfer. But for those of you that have worked in the transfer system or transfer policies, can kind of understand how that would be a difficult process. But anywho, wanted to share that about my state. Would love to learn more about your state and how your graduation pathways are set up, but that's currently the situation in Louisiana. And so also wanted to share some data around the ACT over 20. So this gives you a breakdown of the student demographics and the percentage of those students who are actually receiving above a 20. And as you can see, 17% of students that identify as economically disadvantaged have a score above 20. Only 12% of Black African American students are scoring above a 20 in Louisiana, compared to 43% of our white colleagues. Again, 15% that identify in foster care or homelessness also are scoring above the 20. So a small amount of students are actually tapping in to the TOPS funding that exists. And again, from a policy level, from a personal level, it's really near dear to my heart. I almost made this my dissertation, but then my committee was like, you will be in here for 10 years the way you go down the rabbit hole. Because some of the data is available when it comes to TOPS from our border regions. I'm still waiting and trying to ask for that Jumpstart data to really get an idea of, can we see this data broken down from a socioeconomic standpoint, but also by race and ethnicity, to be curious of what students are on what pathway. So wanted to share that, which brings us to our first table conversation. And this is something we've all been talking about since day one. So this came out of a Michael Bloomberg report before the pandemic, but it basically says, one side thinks that every student should get an acceptance letter from a 4-year college. The other argues that college is overrated and that we should focus on preparing young people for well-paid careers that don't require a 4-year education. And so many of you have probably sat in rooms around this debate. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, but it really is a conversation that's happening not even just in schools, but it's happening across workforce, industry, boards, funders, philanthropy, et cetera. So I want to take some time for all of us to just take about 2 to 3 minutes to pick a side, either side. Some of you may fall in the middle, and engage in this conversation of one side thinks that every student, et cetera, should be accepted to a 4-year, while the other thinks it's overrated and young people should be prepared for careers that don't require a 4-year education. And some guiding questions here are, what could be the underlying assumptions that exist on either side of the debate? Who currently decides the path for your students at your school, your district, your organization? And why does this debate even matter? What is at stake here? So we'll take about 2 minutes to engage in that conversation across our tables, and I would love about 2 or 3 of you to share out. Obviously, some good conversation, great healthy debate. Would love to hear from a few of you at the tables about if this is a debate or a healthy debate or conversation that you're having currently, where you are. Would love to hear from a few of you about how does this land for you. Yes.
I guess I just want to speak to why does a debate matter?
Yeah.
Because the expectations that we put, right? It's almost like insurance. Nobody wants to get in an accident, but people want to have it. And when we look at the pathways, what insures in this game of life, it gives you the most options. And I And I think about the pandemic, the financial crisis. People had college degrees, the unemployment rate was low. It was standard. Everyone else was going up. So in this economy, in the United States, what prepares you in a situation to have the most options? And I think that's the part of it, depending on who you come across. We were talking about, the one individual you came in encounter with, it's the environment that it encounters everybody, just what happens. So I think it makes a difference who you engage with and where you're around. You got a good example.
Anyone else? Yes.
I would like to piggyback off of that and just add some more context. So I'm a school counselor in Louisiana. With the Jump Start and TOPS kind of pathways, I'm more on the TOPS pathway, but because of the school I'm at, we do a mixture of both in the sense where everybody go TOPS for college preparation, but you also can enter courses where they give certifications so that you can graduate with a certification and a TOPS diploma in a sense. But I think a lot of that also, the reason this came up was because at the middle point of high school, a lot of students were not performing as well at those basic level classes. That why would we force you to go into advanced level classes when you have not mastered these classes? Let's look at some other options to help get you career ready as well. On top of that, as the presentation, the blueprint presentation we sat in yesterday, a lot of the image and television shows now are not promoting college. You don't see any television show that shows individuals, families talking about college. Going here, a lot of the television now is get money quick. So how can I get money quick right out of high school? Okay.
To hear from about two folks, as how would you advise our lovely student Maya? What other factors may be leading to her decision? What assumptions could Maya have about student loan debt? What are the pros and cons of choosing the community college over the 4 years? So we'd love to hear from about two of you around. How would you advise?
I go first.
Yes.
So my initial reaction was not that, let me put a disclaimer out there, not that she's not capable of going through a 4-year, but advising her in her current condition to start off with a community college. And a lot of the thought process behind that was, one, she's a decent student, but it's going to allow her the opportunity to understand what that next level of learning is going to look like, and it's setting her up for success versus just pushing her off the deep end into that traditional 4 years. Now it's like sink or swim, and we know that a lot of times when students are put in that situation, they sink.
Yeah.
So that gives her the opportunity to get situated, understand what that level of learning looks like, and then with the transfer agreement, she can pick and choose where she wants to go, and also explore, do I want to be an electromediator, here, and try to see what my next step is going to be.
Great, thank you. Does someone have an opposite reply of you would do something the opposite? Just curious. So he chose choosing community college for Maya. She'll start at a community college, opt to transfer, see if this is something that she's interested in. Maybe she may not be particularly ready for engineering. Does anybody have an opposite advising?
So in light of the responsibilities at home, thinking as the optimist, if the responsibilities at home wouldn't persist past her being in high school, I would also encourage her to look at options outside of state, right? Because there are plenty of out-of-state colleges that would take her credentials and give her more scholarships, more access than the TOPS program would. So if the home situation wouldn't keep her in Louisiana, I would help her to find out-of-state options that would give her more access.
Yep, thank you. So 3 different perspectives, all 3 could work. Personally, I would ask more questions, obviously, to try to understand her family situation of, does it require her, does she have to be in Louisiana, or can she think about out of state? Some of the other things I would think about is obviously encourage her to continue to retake the ACT to try to unlock the funding. If she's at an 18, she could get to a 20. That's not too big of a gap. So that would be something else I would advise with her. I'd also ask her which institutions she's thinking about for engineering, and we would kind of look at those different programs, which community colleges actually transfer, because engineering and business, right, STEM or business, are really difficult transfer programs. So they normally do not follow the 2+2. So just something to think about if you have a student that's coming and they want to go to a college of business, or they want to do some sort of STEM, engineering, and engineering faculty are very particular about courses. And so I would really have that sit down with her around, does it make sense? Will you even be able to navigate this 2+2? Or do you have enough family infrastructure? Can you get the 20? Can you get into an engineering program, whether it's in-state or out-of-state, and kind of start there and be successful? So just wanted to add in some of the additional questions, but I think all of these would be good pathways and good things to talk to Maya about. Okay, and lastly, I wouldn't be me if I didn't leave you with some tangible resources to take with you. Here's just a snapshot of different books and associations. I'm also a co-author on NACAC, Chapter 19. What chapter are you? 20. Oh, she's right after me. What's up? It's a really amazing book. I was perusing through it. It's a pretty hefty book. But whether you're a first-year counselor or a vet, there's a lot of great information in this book. And a lot of practitioners wrote those chapters, which I think is really helpful, those of us that have been in the field. And these are some other really amazing resources to think about as you're building out culturally responsive pedagogy. Gloria Ladson-Billings' research obviously is phenomenal, and someone to look into. We've mentioned NCAN a lot, National College Attainment Network, which has a conference here in Anaheim in September. Some of the other associations, obviously many of you are already members of ASCA, NASPA, for those of you that are higher ed and really in the student affairs industry area, that's another great association to join and conference to attend. And then some of these other resources are super helpful and things that I've read and reread along the way. And then here is my why. These are some of my students and organizations I get to work with. I don't get to work with students directly often, so when I do, I cherish it, I hold on to them. I'm also a TRIO alum, and so I work with a lot of our TRIO students. I had about 50 Gen Zers last summer, which gave me a run for my money. But being able to really connect with them and understand how they think and what they want to do and what they use, and I've learned a lot in my experience with getting proximate to the work. I'm always sharing with leaders that are in positions who may not have direct student access. Find a way to get proximate to the work. Go sit down and do that new FAFSA and really realize what's going on, right? Really spend the time to do that. And with that said, I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for the time. I hope this was fulfilling and you learned something new. Here's my contact information. There's also some stuff on the table, but we'd love to connect with all of you. And those of you I haven't met yet, I look forward to doing so. Thank you.